Rachel, it would be awesome to get started with a little bit of your personal journey into the world of veganism. What's kind of brought you here?
So, I suppose you start seeing these TV programs, Hugh's Chicken Run, I think, and Jamie Saves Our Bacon, or whichever one it was. And, you know, these people are showing you what's being done to animals so that I can put bacon in my face. And I was like, well, okay, I'm starting to feel a bit uneasy about this. Right. So, you know, I'd start trying to buy British, you know, the tractor stuff. So then it's British farms because that's better. And then free range chicken because that's better. And then a friend of mine actually became vegan, and she started posting things on Facebook and became associated with an animal sanctuary who rescues farm animals. And I watched Land of Hope and Glory.
Okay.
And I was traumatized afterwards. I felt awful. I felt really shitty about myself and the choices that I've been making. And obviously, the more you interact with things on Facebook, the more it shows you. Like the algorithm's like, you want animal abuse videos? This is great. We'll show you more. Here you go. And I remember it was like a news clip of a woman it was either America or Canada, and it was 40 degrees outside, and there was a big traffic jam, and there was a slaughter truck full of pigs. And you could see her with the smartphone camera recording it, and these pigs are gasping on the floor because it's so hot. And she squirted water through the bars and got arrested for criminal damage. And I think that's the one that hit me the hardest, of how, you know, we rail against people who put dogs in hot cars. So why is it okay for pigs to be in hot trucks? You know, and the dissonance got harder and harder to balance. So I decided, as I always do, because I don't do half measures, I was like, I'm going vegan. So I went from everything to nothing, you know, and I was very much the sort of person that would go to an all-you-can-eat steak buffet and eat all of it, you know, and then suddenly I was like, oh shit, I need to radically change my approach to cooking, what I'm going to buy. So I cooked my last sort of meat meal in December. It was Christmas dinner 2017. I was like, right, that's going to be the last time I eat meat as much as I can. And then started buying, you know, like soy milk and soy yogurt and trying to find ways of replacing it. And then, just sort of dived headfirst into the world of plants. And it's kind of, I've always loved food and I've quite enjoyed cooking, but I think this has reinvigorated that love and born a curiosity of, okay, well, if I can't get the chewy, juiciness from a steak, what can I get that's going to kind of satisfy the textural things that I'm craving? And how can I get that from plants? You know, and it's just made me very experimental and a bit kind of creative and, adventurous, which is fun. It's a lot of fun.
And what were the reactions like from friends and family? Because I imagine lots of people, if they knew you as, you know, the Rachel who goes to the all-you-can-eat steak buffet and you know is there for the night, like, and then you've transitioned to this, you know, what was their reaction like?
There was a lot of shock, but I think a lot of my friends, you know, have known, you know, I love animals and, you know, I've always tried to be a caring and compassionate sort of person. So I think there was a bit of, really? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. You know, and like my mum, because when we eat together, we used to typically eat vegetarian. You know, it wasn't always, we were never a sort of meat and two veg kind of family. So she was like, well, you know, whenever you cook for me, I'm happy to eat vegan food. It'll be interesting to see what you can make, and recommended some like Otto Lengi, Yotam Ottolenghi. She's like, I've got his cookbooks if you want to read them. He does a lot of vegan stuff. So I think there was a little bit of shock and, oh, okay, I didn't have you down for a tofu eater. but and then kind of a lot of support, I think, as well, and people, you know, for who I haven't seen them for a year or so, like, you're still vegan? Like, oh, well done, mate, nice one. Yeah, that's great.
Having kind of got into it, you know, from an animal ethics point of view, you know, very much with that, you know, that video of that save and the pig, you know, receiving a drink in those awful moments in its life. You know, did you did you kind of have any sort of feelings around the health side? Did you was there any concern in you that it was like, well, I've just made this decision ethically, but my health might have to suffer as a result of it? Or were you fairly confident in the knowledge?
Yeah, I don't think that ever. I think, if anything, I thought it'd probably do a bit of benefit. Because I can't eat Haribo or like loads of chocolate and stuff. And I've always or in recent years, I've become more aware that we're being sold this. You need more protein, and it's a load of bollocks. So there was never that sort of barrier for me, really. And then there's been, because I have a medical condition, I've got something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is like a connective tissue disorder. And it's gotten worse in the last few years. And I'm like, is this because of my diet?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. And then I'm like, what do I do about that if it is, And I don't know what. And, so I have these 2 a.m., when you're on the toilet, like, what would I do if I have to eat meat? I'm like, well, I'd have to go hunting, I suppose, because I couldn't see myself ever going back to buying plastic tubs full of meat.
Yeah.
So what's the most ethical way of consuming meat? Well, it'd be going out and catching it, wouldn't it? Or shooting a pigeon in my backyard, something like that. But I don't know, it's one of these things, again, I need to explore a bit more and find out, because it's all, you end up on Google having a look and you just end up down rabbit holes and misinformation. So it's one of these things you get left with. You get the diagnosis and then out the door, go on, off you fuck, sort it out yourself. So it's going to take money to get nutritionists and people who know veganism and know Ehlers-Danlos to kind of get that intersectionality, so they can do both, really.
And I imagine that's a pretty niche group of people who know that condition really well and are vegan nutritionists.
That's it. It's going to be, because I've met a load of nutritionists, I've met a load of vegans, but, and a load of people with Ehlers-Danlos, but it's, getting somebody who knows, because very little is known about the disorder.
Yeah.
And they say, it's quite rare. And it's like, it's not. It's just rarely diagnosed because, especially in the UK, the NHS has been put under these ridiculous constraints of, you've got 10 minutes for an appointment. So if you've got someone like me who walks in with multi-system issues, they have to treat symptomatically rather than taking a step back and saying, right, let's look at your body. Let's look at your mind. Let's look at everything that's going wrong and seeing if there's something. Because, there is. There's something that would check every box that you've just walked in with. So, but, hopefully the more time that passes and the more funding that's given to these areas and the more, Twitter is great for finding other people like you. So chronic illness Twitter, I've learned so much and found so many people that have the exact same experiences, and it's led me to kind of realize, that isn't nothing, that's actually a medical disorder that I have, and when I stand up and fall over, that's because of POTS. So it's really interesting how these little changes you make in your life and lifestyle, you suddenly end up finding this world of information. And for me, it's helped me kind of grow as a person, as woo-woo as that sounds, but being able to understand my body and understand my limits physically has helped me to become kinder with myself. Instead of, you're a lazy bastard, get up. It's like, I'm going to die if I don't rest for a couple of days because I'm in a lot of pain right now. It's that kind of finding balances.
It's interesting and good to hear. I think that you've found like-minded and people going through similar experiences on social media. Has your experience of social media, either in the vegan community or outside of it, is it generally been that positive? Because I suppose for most people it's probably not. I'm wondering, moving into the vegan community, have you found it a more positive space, or are there just as many problems as sort of non-vegan social media, if you like? Yeah,
I joined a couple of Facebook groups, like one's for aquafaba, one's for seitan, and you read through a few posts and like, this is really nice. Everyone's there we go. There's the bitching. And it's just like, I don't know, I guess it's this kind of shield that computers give us or social media gives us. It's like, I can say anything I want because they can't see me. And so I think, sort of our our social compassion and perhaps our common decency is being slowly eroded online. Because with the things you say online, for a lot of people, they just wouldn't say to your face.
No,
but they suddenly feel empowered because they've got a device there. So it's like a bit of anonymity. Yeah, there's plenty, there's as many assholes in the vegan community as there is in real world, in real life. Yeah.
Sadly, I'll probably have to agree. Thinking about, the inspiration behind the channel, because, and coming at it from the angle of what we've just talked about there and the presence on social media, what has struck me about it, apart from the great cooking and the tips and tricks and so on, is that the feeling it creates is one of getting to hang out with you in a pretty relaxed space, and it feels sort of slower in a good way, calmer in a good way, more at home than I see a lot of sort of other vegan influencer type cooking channels and things like that, which are much more showy, if you like, for want of a better word, much more kind of about the presenter rather than about the relationship between the presenter and the audience, which I think is really unique about yours and something I really enjoy.
Thank you.
Was that kind of something that you were keen to create when thinking about it? What was the inspiration behind it?
COVID. So I had to self-isolate from the 16th of March last year.
Okay.
So 2 weeks in my bedroom, and then full lockdown happened. Wow. And I got to the point, it must have been, I guess, mid-April, and I was like, okay, I've watched Tiger King. I've watched all the Netflix.
I've done that. I've made a banana bread.
Right. I've got a sourdough starter. Everything's cool. And I'm just, and so I have depression, anxiety, and I could feel myself circling the drain of a major episode. I was like, right, I need something to focus on. And I'm an actor and a writer, public speaker, and all of my creative outlets typically require other people or waiting or patience, these kind of things. Whereas cooking, so I just started going in the kitchen and baking or cooking, and then I'd post take a picture, and people on Twitter were like, why don't you, have a YouTube channel? And I was like, well, why don't I have a YouTube? Yeah, all right, okay, why not? So, and it was literally as easy as that. And because I thought as well, creating a kind of, not passive income, but creating a revenue stream that didn't rely on me leaving the house was going to be invaluable, because I don't think this is the last time we're going to see this kind of thing until we start radically changing our eating choices. I think this kind of thing is sadly going to keep happening. Maybe not to this extent, but I think, certainly the way we travel the world and the way we, anyway. So I thought it's great. It's a great time to build something and start creating a little brand for myself, a little business. And the thing I find annoying for me, like TV chefs in particular, is they'll just tell you to use something, but they don't say why they're doing it. And I'm like, but why are you putting that in there? What does it do? So I made a sort of decision, right, anytime I put something in that's not obvious, I want to try and explain why I'm doing it. And if I don't know, I'll say I don't know, but I'm going to find out, and kind of show people my working out, as it were.
Yeah.
And I don't practice anything typically. I just turn the camera on, I have a rough idea in my head, I've got ingredients, and I'm like, right, let's see what happens, start boshing things in a pan. And people seem to really be enjoying that. And like you say, it's that informality, I suppose. It's just me in the kitchen and the kind of Auntie Rachel, and very much the chaotic kitchen as it started as I was editing. I was like, there is that sort of kind of, I'd like people to think I don't know where to go for advice, I'm going to go ask Auntie Rachel, and I'm not a parent, and I don't think I ever will be a parent, but I'd love to have little, and I don't have any siblings, so, and I guess it's that from other cultures that, call uncle and auntie to sort of, older people or just any other people that they see. I kind of like that. I think it builds a really nice connection in a way. So the channel is very much just me experimenting, and I try not to hide my failures, and and people, so on YouTube you can see all of your analytics. And I know this is wrong because I know a few women watch it, but according to YouTube, 100% of my viewers are men, which I think is hysterical for a cooking show. But, so I've had like meat eating guys say, "You're the only woman that could make me go vegan." And I'm really enjoying what you're doing, and I've had someone said, "Oh, I made my wife the apple butter the other day and she loved it," or, "I made the grits cake and it's incredible." So just getting these guys cooking, and it's unfortunate that this is special to me, that men cooking is such a, "Oh, that's great."
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So, and if I can help normalise that, encouraging guys to get into the kitchen and nourish themselves and entertain themselves in a non-destructive manner, then yeah, that's great,
And fascinating that there's lots of non-vegan folks as well coming to the channel. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the guys know me from my past work as an adult film star.
Yeah.
So they, and then I was doxed, so that's how they know my real name. So they obviously they Google and then, "Oh, what's she got on YouTube? Oh, that's not what I expected, but hang on. What's she doing with that sweet potato? She's making fudge out of it." So it's this, and if that helps create, vegans, stealth veganizing, I think that's a wonderful thing.
Well, it's an angle I've not come across yet, but why not? I think it's like the sort of Trojan horse of bringing people into the community.
Absolutely.
What's the reaction been like from perhaps those folks from who know you from that past industry? Have they generally, like you say, they've taken to vegan cooking and accepted this is where Rachel's at? It's great.
Yeah, so I did a podcast interview a couple of weeks ago, and after retiring like 10 plus years ago, I was kind of like, right, I'm done with that. It doesn't serve any purpose. I don't make any money from it, so I'm just going to walk away. And then, people harass and hound and everything. And I just, tried to kind of keep my head down a bit. But recently I've started doing public speaking and I've written a book, all this kind of stuff. And I did this podcast and I thought, well, I'd like to share this with my followers, but I suppose need to out myself. So I put something on on all my social media and said, used to do porn and now I do this, and the amount of comments and the support and the love of guys saying, "I know you from your past work and I love that you've reinvented yourself and I love watching everything you're doing now. I think it's incredible." It's really beautiful. Like I was crying reading these comments, just like, "Oh my God, this is so touching."
Yeah, look, it's brilliant that you've found this, a different career and moved into this space. And like I say, if it takes some people who were fans before and moves them into a new space and gets them cooking, and why not? I say it's a great shout. Yeah, I'm interested. Like this project of, you've come up with this idea. You want to create this YouTube channel. Obviously, you've got a creative past, public speaker, actor, all of these kind of different creative streams. But taking on the kind of technical challenges of, and we talked about it before we started recording a little bit, but taking on the technical, was that a learning curve for you, or were these skills you kind of brought from the past?
I don't know if curve's the right word. It was like a so I had when you, as an actor, you have to do self-tapes.
Right.
So I had editing software. I used Filmora. But my experience of editing was title card, clip, title card, send.
Okay.
So suddenly I had to take 4 hours of cooking and distill that to 10 minutes and then, and work around all of these many issues that doing this kind of stuff throws up. Suddenly like, oh, well, I can't use that because, and it took a while because I do everything myself. So I would be talking and explaining something, and then I'd have like, oh shit, I forgot to do this, and then I'd forget and turn my back to the camera and just stop talking and just going off in my head like, oh my God. So, but it's like, as I'm relaxing into it, because I guess I've been filming since July, so I don't know, 6-7 months now, and as I'm relaxing into it, I can get my B cam and I can pull it in and out of shot, because at the beginning I kept forgetting it. Just, I can't use any of this. So, and then now I'm getting better with the edit, like the Jamaican ginger cake that we were talking about. Like a few people said, I think that's the best one yet. Just the way that you're editing it and moving things around is just really skillful. And I can't believe you've taught yourself how to do that. So but again, I buzz off it, being able to seeing a problem and then thinking, okay, how can I get around this? And then, so the ident thing where you see the crosses come up, I was like, you can't do really animation in the software. So I got like a screen recording app, drew the crosses and put them over like a green picture, and then chroma keyed it back out again, and just sat down afterwards like, I cannot believe I've just figured out how to do that. Like proper buzzing off it, so it's wonderful to teach yourself things and to explore and throw yourself in really wholeheartedly, just leaping towards the unknown, I think is incredibly empowering.
Is there an element of you having found this kind of creative outlet in this that is, I suppose, potentially a little bit apprehensive about sort of us going back, if it's June 21st and everything's kind of, we're all out in the open again, and everything's, as it was before, not that it probably will be, but, in that imaginary world, if it is, and we go back to the treadmill that we were all on before, how would you feel about that?
I don't know. It's a weird. I mean, because I tend to spend most of my time on my own anyway, so I was ready for this. This isn't such a shock to me. I'm like, nah. Look at you all floundering, and I'm here. Yeah, okay, I'm ready. Bring it on. I think it's going to be a real struggle for some people who have, especially people who are very social, then they're suddenly very isolated and then suddenly going back out into the wild again. I think, because I've certainly noticed when I'm speaking to people, if you're chatting to a shop assistant, you just get very tired afterwards. So I think we've all become slightly institutionalized. And I think we've got this, having to maintain 2 meter distance. I get back from the supermarket and I'm exhausted, because you just have to be on your guard. Like, oh my God, this old lady's like here. Like, get your shopping and barge her out the way. So I think it's going to take a long period of readjustment to get, and I don't know if we ever will get back to normal, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. In some ways, obviously, and there are other parts of me that grieve, maybe is the right word, for the world that we had. But I'm trying to live in hope that we're going to learn some stuff from this, and we're going to realise these things aren't necessarily as important as we thought they were, but these things are much more precious than we realised. And teaching us skills and how to navigate the online world, and embrace technology, but then really treasure those kind of in-person interactions that we have. And nature, hopefully, because we've all, we've all gone on our daily walks and we go outside. And I think the first lockdown in particular, I wish I'd spent more time outside listening, because the sound of human silence was just phenomenal. Like hearing birds doing this call and respond to the call, you could hear one group of birds and just there must have been thousands of them making this noise, and I was just mesmerised. But then I was like, "Oh right, yeah, I'll come back tomorrow." And then suddenly it was like, "Look, restrictions are lifted." I'm like, "Oh, there are the cars again and the planes." Okay, I've missed an opportunity, haven't I?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Particularly that first lockdown, there was that sense, and there was a real reconnection, I think, with things that were important. Whether it's you appreciated the time you have with family, or appreciating your surroundings and nature, and so I think those were really important. I do have a bit of a fear or concern almost that we're racing to get back, and we'll be so excited to do all the things that we did before that we'll see an explosion in international travel, and it'll be worse than it was before. And I hope not, but there's a sort of, as a counter to your optimism, there's probably a little pessimistic side of me that says, is that going to happen? But I hope not. Let's hope not.
I mean, the thing and this has been on my mind since, very early on, like we already had really bad plastic waste problems. I just dread to think, because within a couple of months there were just masks all over. Everywhere. And I don't live in a particularly busy neighbourhood. And even there, it was just, I'm like, you dirty bastards. Why would why? Why are we doing this? So those places in the ocean where it's just like these islands of trash, what are they made of now? That's... But then I'm like, don't think about it, just eat some cake. Otherwise you'll crawl into a hole and never come out.
Well, that's the scary thing. But I think we'll be okay if we think about Jamaican ginger cake.
Right, and dulce de leche, it solves everything.
Something that's going back to the channel, like it'd be great to sort of understand a little bit about where you get and have got the inspiration for your recipes on, because there is a real sense of for me of like really kind of comforting home cooking a lot, as well as it feeling creative and kind of often things that I wouldn't necessarily have thought to try. So
same.
So where have they come from?
I honestly, most of the time I don't know. I'll see something and then I don't know. I don't know how it works, and I wish I had a better answer than that. But so I think, like, I made sweet potato fudge, and I think that started because I made a pate from sweet potato, and then I thought, I could use that process, and it's quite sticky and gooey, and I'd want some fudge. And I have these, like, I want this end result, and this is what I've got. What can I put, what can I do? It's very, I have a very active brain late at night. I'm very much a night owl. And the more tired and stressed I am, the more creative I get. I think my brain's trying to escape the darkness that's in there. It's like, cake! It's like, what's nice? What can you feed yourself that's going to make you feel better? But it's about this kind of, the more experimental it is, the more fun I find it, And so last weekend I made a creme brulee, and I was just like, well, I'm going to use silken tofu, because that's kind of a bit wobbly, and coconut cream and condensed milk. Let's just see what happens. So it is just very experimental. And when I made the Jamaican ginger cake, when I did the dulce de leche, I thought, I wonder what happened, because I pressure cooked that for 15 minutes, and I thought at the time, I wonder what would happen if I made this really dark. If I put it in for an hour, would it go black? What would happen? So I thought I'll do that for the creme brulee. Wow. It doesn't go much darker. So that's going to need more experimentation. But I just, I have a little notepad next to my bed with just little ideas that I'll jot down, and then each time I do a recipe, it kind of sparks off ideas for another 3 or 4, and techniques that I learn. Or I'll watch, the 2 ones I watch on YouTube are Sauce Stash and Connie's Rawsome Kitchen. Those were kind of the 2 first channels I started watching as I transitioned. Well, I didn't even transition when I went vegan. And they're very, because that's the kind of cook I've always been, just experiment, just throw things in a pan, see what happens. And then seeing them do that with plants, I was like, there's some fun in that. And especially with Sauce Stash, he's just got this little kid kind of vibe to him, like, oh my God, he just gets so excited. I'm like, I want that. I want to be blown away by ingredients.
So there was no cooking history, like formally, no training. This is all creativity. Me.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in restaurants, but front of house since, I don't know, age 13, I suppose. So some of the techniques, like I know how to quenelle, like do fancy scoops.
Very nice.
So there is little bits of cooking knowledge, I suppose, but I'm very much a home, self-taught home cook, learned from my mum. But when I started filming, Mum said to me, like, I remember you as a kid experimenting while we were baking. Like instead of putting milk in a cake, you'd put orange juice because you wanted to see what would happen when you were like 8. So she said, I guess this is where you were always meant to be. I guess everything you've done in your life was always kind of going to pull you back in this direction. You know, it's that.
Wow.
Yeah, I like pushing boundaries, I suppose, in a way of, like what can I do with this food that's going to be unexpected, and I love being surprised.
Have you had folks kind of starting to request the recipes be put into some sort of other form, you know, into book form or a blog or?
Yeah, people keep asking me if I'm going to do a book, and I would love to do that. Excuse me. I'd love to do like my mum got me a book for my birthday, which is The Food Lab. I want to say Kenji J. Alto, and it's the most ridiculous book I've ever seen. It's amazing. It's 700 odd pages, and each page is like a magazine kind of thickness, so you can it's that thick and it's that big.
Wow.
You know, it's beastly. You have to read it in bed. That's how heavy this thing is. But he just gets very geeky into the science of food, but as a meat eater. So there's very little in there about veg. It's all about the cooking temperatures and the Maillard reaction and, you know, should you salt beef before or after cooking, this kind of stuff, which is great. And I do kind of learn a little bit about food that way. But I would very much like to do something that detailed, but do it for plants. You know, and because I've got all these powders in my cupboard, all these starches and gums and all sorts, and I don't really know anything about them. So to get a publishing deal or however it happens, you know, and then be like, okay, I'm getting paid to find out about this stuff and go and speak to food scientists and, you know, really start understanding why I'm putting these things in my food, you know, because I do it a little bit, but it's just guesswork. So to be able to have a more informed guess would be great. And, I've thought about doing a course as well, like an online course, because I do some very, I did one video was trying to create the perfect gammon steak because I was trying to make snacks and I mixed potato starch and a load of spices and some water, chucked it in the air fryer. And when I opened it and pulled it out, it was like jelly, like it looked like bacon. I was like, oh my God. So that
You've created a meat substitute.
Yeah. It was mad. Like, I'll email it if you like, the pictures that I took. I was like, that looks like raw bacon. Okay, what can I do with this? So then I spent, 9 hours in the kitchen, filmed it all, and just doing different starches with oil, different starches with water, different starches with yogurt. What's all this going to do? So I guess I was subconsciously building up course material potentially, so I've just got a hard drive full of stuff that I wouldn't want to put on YouTube because it's not my best. It's stuff that would be better in a kind of course setting, something that doesn't need to be quite as polished or switched on, and it's okay if I've got my back to the camera because I'm depressed. That kind of thing.
I love this almost like scientific approach to your creativity. Like I'll keep trying and testing and how did that work, and then noting that down. Is that seems like quite a unique style to you. I've not heard many other people sort of approach it like that. I think it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, it was sort of, and that isn't typically how I cook. I rarely rehearse anything, practice anything, but I think especially after seeing this potato starch bacon, I was intrigued. Like, I need to do a bit of, okay. And, I keep having these ideas of, I should do that and maybe do a multi-step thing and do a kind of almost experiment lab setting kind of deep dive into it. I've made, I made gummies out of apple, like, 'cause I have an apple tree in my garden. I got so many apples last year. So I made gummies out of that. Then I made licorice out of the apple puree. And it's kind of fascinating, these random powders that I get from special ingredients. Like, these are special.
I can't even imagine, like, having the sort of courage to buy them. You know, like, because I just think, I don't know what the first thing to, but I love, it's just such a, you know, joy of creativity. Like, I'll just buy them and see what happens.
It typically happens because I'll be either on eBay or Amazon at 2 a.m. Like, oh yeah, so the other day I bought a smoker. Because I made vegan cheese and now I need to smoke it.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, so I'll be like, oh, I wonder what this thing is. Oh, I'll buy some of that and try it. And then it's like, you might also like. I'm like, yeah, I need some. What? I've got 2 pots and I can't remember what it's like, calcium something and sodium something else. And it's what they use for molecular gastronomy to make, you know, like the little pearls of stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'll make sausage casings. I've been in there for a year. I've not even touched it, but, you know, one day. But yeah, I do kind of, I like doing something and then it not being quite right. And then I think, oh, do you know what? Do you know what might work in there? That random thing I bought 6 months ago that I haven't touched. That'll do that job. And I love that.
Another thing that's kind of fascinating about it and your approach to it is you don't sort of shy away from trying to make meat substitutes and cheese substitutes and things like that, you know, like, whereas I think most sort of vegan cooks, particularly kind of home cooks, wouldn't probably attempt that kind of stuff. They would buy that stuff shop and then kind of make, you know, stuff purely out of, like, you know, make carrots out of carrots kind of thing. You know, it wouldn't be, what can I do with this and make something? It has the kind of like appealing, particularly to maybe your own, you know, former taste profiles, the things you used to enjoy, as well as the omnivorous folks now that you're kind of interacting with. It is appealing to that palate, important to you as part of the channel and part of your cooking.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, the meat substitutes are expensive, and they generate a lot of plastic waste as well. So there's part of it is trying to eliminate some of that. And also, because I never really ate pre-packaged food. So now it just seems mad to be vegan and eating processed food. Like, you know, so there's that kind of, but I still haven't got it right. There's still that fucking wheat gluten flavour. But, so, yeah, it's that. I think my palate woke up when I stopped eating animal products and I was like, what is it? Okay, so what is it I'm missing? What do I want? Chew and crunch became very important. And hot sauce, I started eating more. I think because you don't have the chew, you start looking for other sensations. Or for me, I did anyway. And I just, I find it reassuring maybe that I can go in the cupboard and make meat. You know, something that's very high protein. I'm like, this is the perfect apocalypse food. So like, when the zombies come, I'll be all right. You know, it doesn't matter if there's no cows, I'll still be able to feed myself protein. You know, but it's that, again, just this joyous exploration of different sensations and textures and what can I put in here and that's missing something. Oh, I'll chuck some tequila in it. Oh, because that tastes gamey. Like, it's mad the way the things you suddenly discover, and it's like, you know, those what do they call them? Exploded views you see, especially in in like
in product marketing and stuff. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So that is what my palate has become. It's like. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, it's this, and this. These are the elements that I'm missing from a steak. You know, it has that kind of rancid off vibe that venison has, but then it's got this sweetness. And, you know, how do I get that into what I'm trying to make? So it's so interesting. It's just the best way, you know, trying to. And I guess you develop, or I've developed, a language almost, or a wider vocabulary of what it is that I'm looking for. Whereas before I was like, oh yeah, I just want something meaty. It's like, yeah, but what does that mean? What is it that you want from meat? So now I'm much more able to better specify. I want to bite into something and it bursts loads of juice into my mouth, or, you know, I want something that feels good between my molars, or, you know, is able to pinpoint things.
Where do you stand on the meat substitute stuff? You know, because like you talked about there, you know, they're often expensive, the plastic packaging not great, etc. But as somebody, you know, who's transitioned into the world of veganism, did you find, you know, initially you relied quite heavily upon them? Do you think they still have a place, or do you think there's a slightly dangerous element of potential for putting people off veganism because they might not be that as healthy if they, you know, eat a lot of meat substitutes, and also they won't feel any cost savings of not buying meat because they're buying quite expensive substitutes? Where do you think they sit? Do they have a role?
Oh, absolutely. I think excuse me, I think it's all well and good having these ideologies if you should just eat whole food and, you know, just quinoa or whatever. It's just not practical, you know. And I think it's, you know, for people who are transitioning or who are even just wanting to have like one meat-free meal a week, I think meat substitutes, they provide a bit of familiarity. And I think when you have familiarity, if you have a sort of relatively stable foundation, you can then start become a bit more experimental or adventurous. You know, if you, you know, plants aren't the most exciting thing to eat sometimes unless you really know what you're doing. So to expect somebody to go from eating meat and all animal products to then suddenly just eating plants without giving them any tools or anything that's familiar, it's just I think it's a very difficult, especially for people in the UK, because, you know, the palate, the spices, it's, you know, it's a cuisine that's not packed full of herbs and spices. Well, it's becoming more so, I suppose, but whether you compare to some like Middle Eastern food or Indian food, they're very, you know, potent in their aromatics and flavourings. So it's, I think, easier to, okay, we'll cut out the minced lamb and just put chickpeas, you know, because you've got all this other stuff going on. Whereas I think meat substitutes, yeah, they're not the most healthful thing to be eating, you know, and I certainly don't eat them every day of the week. But sometimes you just want a burger. You want something that's just filthy and, you know, just tastes good. And like I had I want to say Rebel Whopper, the plant-based, and do you know what? It was delicious. And I didn't have that horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach like I used to get with beef burgers, you know, it's just taking ages to digest. I was like, I'm full, but I don't feel heavy, which was nice. And I could see other people eating it and you know, and they were like having this thing with their mates, like, oh my God, this actually tastes all right. And that's so exciting. You know, when you hear stories how KFC are selling out of their plant-based chicken like that, I just think that's wonderful. You know, anything that contributes to eating and abusing less animals, for me, is something that should be embraced and shouted about.
Yeah, 100%. Talking about the because you mentioned in there about, you know, having the ideology around whole food, plant-based, or being raw vegan, and, you know, the way that we, you know, the way we share a lot of information, as you and I both do, is through social media and our, you know, the platforms that we build, etc. But there's certainly been in the last few years, I'm sure you've seen in the you know 3 or 4 years since becoming vegan, that there's a rise in that kind of lifestyle veganism on social media, particularly on platforms like Instagram and so on. The kind of you know, the version of the yogi who eats quinoa 3 times a day and so on and so forth, and there's a certain look that is associated with that and all that kind of thing. Do you think that's potentially you know, not particularly conducive to bringing folks along into the vegan community? This is probably a diplomatic way of putting it. I don't mean to ask a leading question, but I'm just intrigued as to your particular perspective on it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a stereotype, isn't there, of, you know, because people will find out I'm vegan. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were vegan. I'm really sorry that I said all that shit. Well, it's all right. Some of them bring it on themselves, don't they, really? But, you know, I suppose for me, I had the capacity to become one of those preachy vegans when I started finding out what was happening in terms of animal agriculture, and it was because I didn't know. But then once I did know, I could make changes. So then I guess there's a thought pattern of perhaps they don't know. So if I tell them, that might help. But then not everybody wants to know, because then you have to make changes. So I guess when the lifestyle vegans, you know, and the ones who are less understanding, not everybody feels the same way. That's why I don't really talk about veganism on the channel. I rarely say vegan in the videos. I title it vegan because that helps with the SEO. But, you know, it's not, I don't make a big point about it being vegan, you know, just because I know that can be a bit off-putting for people. And I guess maybe they worry, is this woman going to show me animal abuse videos that I really don't want to see? You know, because some of them do. But yeah, I think, I don't know, especially with men, I reckon, because quite often you see people like, what's his name, like Earthling Ed, I suppose. Like, to me, I think very handsome chap, but then he's very slender in frame. So then your big lads are like, well, I don't want to look like him because he's, you know, it's like, is that causing his boundary? I don't know. But yeah, there is a certain aesthetic, I think, that people stereotypically think of. And not all of us fit that brief. You know, I look pretty much the same. My face has gotten a lot thinner, but I still eat like a pig. You know, and that shocked me really, that I lost weight and lost fat without trying. It's like, oh, so there is clearly some health benefits to the vegan diet without even trying to. But yeah.
On that subject, did you? Because we didn't really touch on it too much, but did you feel a ton of health benefits as you went through the journey? No,
I mean, and I suppose maybe that's in part because I did eat kind of vegetarian a lot, you know. So I had meat maybe 2-3 times a week, and the rest I'd just, you know, have something like a shakshuka, or I suppose something, you know, with eggs or whatever. And I maybe did think, oh, maybe I'll start feeling a bit healthier. And if I didn't have the medical condition, maybe I would. You know, maybe it's because there's a chronic fatigue element to it. So I'm knackered a lot of the time. I need to stop saying knackered. Shattered would be a better way of putting it, you know. So it was difficult to say, oh yeah, I feel better, and that's because of going vegan. But yeah, I've certainly noticed around here I'm much slimmer, and in the collarbones as well. And when after maybe, I suppose, 6 months after changing, I'd lost weight, but my clothes fit the same. So I wonder if I was losing the fat that sits around your organs, like is it visceral fat they call it? So yeah, I've wondered if I'm losing fat that I can't really see as such, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it was never the reason for it. It was more of a bonus kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Nice byproduct.
Yeah.
Just for folks who've not seen the channel yet, where would you recommend they start? Is there a favourite recipe for you? Is there one that really stands out for you as maybe you enjoyed making it, or you just think it's the best thing to try to start?
So I think... So my personal favourite video is the chocolate and chestnut sweet potato tart with spiced ginger cherry butter, and it's my favourite because the oven died in the middle of making it. And this was on Christmas Eve just gone, and the fact that I kept going and I kind of sidestepped and I adapted. I was like, okay, how am I going to do this thing? Because inside I was like, just sack this off and go back to bed, Rachel. And I didn't. And it came out amazingly. And I was so proud of myself that I was proud of it anyway, but then on top of everything else was just brilliant. But I think that one's a good, because there's like 4 different components. So there's the fruit butter, which I've made a few different fruit butters, so that kind of gives you ideas and the technique of how to do it. Then there's the sweet potato filling, so again you can use that for multiple different recipes. And then there's some pastry, and then there's a ganache on top. So I think it could be a good one for sparking off other ideas of, oh, maybe I could try that but with something else, you know. Yeah, I suppose, or the not shepherd's pie. If people are, like sort of people who are thinking, maybe do I want to go a bit plant-based? That's a great one because you wouldn't necessarily know there's not meat in it because mince doesn't really have that meat sort of thing. And I use lentils and mushrooms to compensate, and a bit of seitan, and polenta on top instead of mashed potatoes.
Oh,
okay. Revelation.
Nice.
Cheesy polenta on top of everything. But yeah, I think that's a good one to spark off some ideas and think, you can kind of just put loads of things in and surround it in gravy and then put it under a duvet of corn and it will be amazing.
I love it. It's kind of if anything, sort of showing people the creativity that you've applied is applicable to them. So like you say, it sparks off 100 ideas that you could do yourself. Once you start getting out of the idea that, in that sort of shepherdless pie, if you like, that there's that you don't have to put mashed potato on top. I think just even that notion then makes people think, well, actually, I don't need to put anything I'm supposed to put anywhere. I could try loads of different things.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
That's it. It's because that's how it keeps happening for me. I'm like, because I think I set out initially to do a mashed potato, and then I was like, maybe did I have no potatoes? I can't even remember how it happened, but I was like, no, polenta would be good, And it just. And once I do something, as the action of doing it then creates, I guess, a pathway. And then my brain is like, yeah, but what about that? So it really does start firing off creativity where I didn't expect it.
I love it. It's a great, I think, reason to get involved in the channel amongst many, many others. Like I say, it does create a warm feeling of hanging out with somebody familiar. It's great. Love it.
So it's really nice to hear.
So on that note, where would folks go about finding you, the channel? I'll obviously put some links in the show notes, etc., for people to find, but it'd be good for them to hear from you.
To hear it. So I can predominantly found on Twitter, which is Auntie Rachel with an 8 instead of the A, but we can link it properly. And then the YouTube is Auntie Rachel's Chaotic Kitchen because it's very chaotic. And then, I'd like to do a website at some point and get the recipes up there, but it's just, I need to sleep at some point.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I'll make sure that folks get some links in there, and I thoroughly recommend people checking out the YouTube channel. I think it's phenomenal. It's great work.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thanks very much.